We're here with Anja Taylor, who's the president of Kinesis this morning, and we're going to be talking about hiring for good. So, hi, Suzanne. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year, Tanis. We are so excited to have you here, Anja. And just to kind of start off, we'd love to hear your journey and how you got where you are today.
I think it's kind of an interesting one. Tell us everything.
Yeah.
In Germany.
Yes, absolutely. Thanks. Thanks for having me. I'm very excited to be here as well. For sure. I'm a very typical Gen Xer, I think, in the sense that, growing up, I was thinking I could do whatever, especially as a woman. Mm-hmm. I think we were the first generation where we were told that we can do whatever we wanted to do and we can have kids and a career. And so I was pretty ambitious in that sense. I always wanted an international career. I wanted to work maybe in development or in Africa. Those were some of the ideas that I had and started out there. I came over here to the United States and studied communications, and then I got a master's in international studies in Monterey. Mm-hmm. And learned pretty quickly that if I wanted to have a family and a career in the international field, that would prove to be very, very difficult. So that either meant that I had to have a partner who was willing to then assume the role of the stay-at-home and do everything else, and really had to find a position where I wouldn't put myself, in dangerous situations and things like that. So I learned that this idea that I had that I could do everything and wanted to do everything and just, the world is my oyster, wasn't really working the way I thought it would be. And so I had a very supportive partner, but also I realized that I needed to be in a situation where I could kind of combine home life and the work life. And so instead of going to places, I'd been in Africa before and worked a little bit there, did an internship. I went back to where I came from in northern Germany and then eventually ended up in Berlin and worked at the United States Embassy there, and also prior to that worked at a turbine manufacturer's lobbying office. So combining my interest in international affairs, international politics, with kind of a more at-home situation, working in the international field. Ultimately, again, when you have a family, you have to make compromises. My husband was interested in pursuing a career in brewing. He has a master's in brewing science, and so we ended up back in Portland. That was in 2006.
Okay.
So that really launched then my career in a different field, and I'm grateful for that. I think one of my values is exploration. Mm-hmm. So I'm often interested in where life leads me without really planning everything out to the last detail. Mm-hmm. I think there's a lot of value in that because you actually get to experience more than maybe you would otherwise. Yeah. And I think that's really important in finding yourself, finding your path. So I ended up at a custom manufacturer as a project manager. Worked there for almost 10 years and really enjoyed working with people who make things, who build things, understanding how physical objects in the world come together. And I also really thrived at this intersection of the client, the craftsman, the financial side of things. So really being the hub of communication around all of these things just really suited me well. I felt I was in charge. I was leading. I then ended up building up that department. At some point, it was 12 people strong. So it was a small company. We grew from 30, I think, to 120 at the time I was there. And because it was manufacturing, I think it was a little bit stagnant for me personally. Mm-hmm. I am driven by wanting to improve things and wanting to do things maybe a little bit better, maybe a little bit differently, and always looking for that. Not to say that what we have is bad, but like, what else can we do? Mm-hmm. Looking at that as a horizon of my kind of bringing value. Mm-hmm. And so when I found Kinesis, I felt those values really aligned. Kinesis' mission is transformation. And talking to the owner and founder, Sean Bussey, at the time, this is more than 6 years ago, I just felt such a gelling of that kind of drive that we had to improve things, to make the world better, and bringing that not just to an organization internally, but the clients that we work with, really through a consultative approach and understanding where we can leverage their opportunities, their strengths, their remarkability to make work better for their employees, to help them grow, whatever that means for them. I was incredibly intrigued by that because it's really this constant improvement that I was looking for to bring that into fruition, both in my role, but also working for a company who has that as a mission is incredibly fulfilling.
No, what an incredible story, because you talked just briefly about some pretty heavy topics. And the first one was generational, that I think the three of us sitting here are Generation X. And, you know, my dad always told this story that when I was about 3, he came home and I was crying and he said, "What's the matter?" And I said, "I don't know if I want to be the first woman president or a ballerina." And
A real existential crisis.
yeah, exactly. But it's funny how we were taught you could be anything and do anything, and education first, make it happen. You make your own path, your own world. And then, as you said, you kind of, we get to this age to saying, what are our priorities then?
And how do you actually have it all?
How do you have it all?
Yes.
And the choices I think we've made as women also impacts it. But yet, through all of this, you found what you love, which is that transformation.
Absolutely.
And growth and direction. I think what a fantastic story, Anja.
It's amazing. I mean, I was also just kind of remarking in my own mind on the different personal growth you experienced. It sounds like during these, during your career trajectory. How did those lessons also come into play as you grew as a leader? I'm assuming, like, once you're a project manager, you're leading a team or you're helping, lead your clients.
Or even more difficult, you don't have direct reports sometimes as a project manager.
Yes.
You have indirect. And how do you...
Yes.
Yeah.
That's a great question. As a project manager, you have all the responsibility, but really none of the power, so to speak. You don't have direct reports. I think I had to learn very quickly on how to build alliances, galvanize people, get them excited about the work. I think I have always pursued leadership. I was, student body president, like those types of things, and that always was something that I was interested in. But understanding, how do I help people do good work? I need them to do the good work. How do I motivate them? How do I galvanize them around an idea? How do I make them excited? Not just yes, I will do, the thing that we need to do here, but also bring the fun into that and bring their sense of purpose and bring that out. So I think as a project manager, I learned to hone that skill or start to develop that skill. I really come from a servant leadership mindset. So what I did, I did not have much experience in building things. I worked with a lot of craftsmen that had, 20, 30 years on me in terms of being on the job, knowing what they were doing. And I was early 30s something in the company, managing, $1.7 million project, and had to be taken seriously. And I knew I had to figure out how to earn credibility and goodwill and the expertise. So I studied a lot. I studied about fabrication. I learned what different screws are called so that I could talk to them on their level, right? And I remember we had a big Nike project. I think that was due. That wasn't my project. And we were short on time. And I happened to be in the shop when the foreman said, "I need everybody here at 6:00. You we need to work long hours. This is going to, be really important. We need to put everything in here that we had. And I said, Rick, I can be here too. Like, there must be tasks that I can do. And he looked at me. He's like, are you serious? And I said, yes, I'm serious. And he just kind of said, okay, and walked away. And so, but I was there the next morning, 6 a.m. He didn't say anything. I stood in the circle with everybody getting briefed on what needed to happen. And then he looked at me and said, ready to work? And then he looked at my shoes, because obviously you need to, wear good shoes to be in the shop around all the things. And I had my hiking boots on. And I said, yep. And so he said, all right, I'll show you how to sand these pieces. And there you go. So I did that. And I think for that whole week, I showed up at 6 a.m. At 8:30, I packed up my stuff and went over to my desk job. And I think that went a long way. Just working in the trenches, building that credibility, building trust. So important as a leader. And it really helped me to solidify those relationships that I needed. And it just gave me, credibility. And it also made me understand what this job was about, what I was asking of people.
Wow, that's an amazing story. I would imagine not just trust, but respect from the team.
Absolutely. And I bonded with people.
Yeah.
That's, again, one of the things that is really important to me. You asked me about my values.
That's actually our next question.
Yes. So one of the values that I really espouse is this relational bonding, is building belonging with people. So not just the transactional piece where, you do your job, I do my job, and we have a good outcome, but really understanding the other person as a whole person, caring for them to the extent that I can. Obviously, there need to be boundaries around that. But I think it's really important to understand that people don't come to work being workers and don't go home being just at home. I think the whole idea about work-life balance is a false dichotomy. It's a dichotomy. So it's false in itself.
It's all
exactly.
Life, right.
It's all life. Exactly. Work is part of life. So making, even in our language, if we make these as adversaries, it takes away a lot of potential in both areas. Because we need to understand that if we had a bad day at work or if we had a good day at work, it influences our home life. So I'm really passionate about integrating the two as much as we can and helping people find fun, enjoyment, and a sense of purpose at work, and also belonging. I think we've talked about that a lot in the sense of DEI, but I think it's really much more than that. It is something that is important for people to be at the place where they are for 8-10 hours a day, to actually connect with it in a way that is meaningful to them. And so I think as a leader, that's part of my job, to provide that and help people find that.
Yeah, and you've mentioned a couple of things through this. You started with rallying around a vision and bringing in your values as this leader, and fun. You've mentioned fun a number of times. So what are some things that you would recommend to a young leader of saying this is how you need to approach it, or look at it this way?
Yeah, that's such a good question. I think that it's important to know yourself first. So self-awareness is always where I would start. And there's many ways you could do that. I think working with a coach can be very insightful and important in that realm. I think talking to your manager about the things that they see in you, writing down a list of things that you enjoy about yourself. Ask your friends, what am I good at? What do you see? And not necessarily because you don't know, but I think often we sell ourselves short and we don't really take enough time to reflect on what we're good at, especially at women. We always think about, what are we not good at? Where do we need to improve? We're not quite enough. We're not quite this. And let's try to shift the conversation into the things that we actually do. We talked about this as mothers. We accomplish so much every day. Let's make a list of that. And let's really think about, what are the skills that I exhibit in terms of time management, in terms of delegating, organizing work, because we need to figure out how to get all of this stuff done, get the kids to school on time, prep the meals, make sure homework is done, take care of ourselves somewhere in there, show up professionally to work. What are the skills that you bring that are actually, again, from your life that you bring into work? And then I would say, when you've identified those things that you're good at, also think about the things that you love. There's a great work. It's a book by Marcus Buckingham, who was one of the people behind the Clifton Strength Finders. And he wrote a book that's called Love and Work. It's really about finding the love in your work. It's not necessarily what you're good at, but it's what you enjoy doing. And again,
Passion.
And passion, yes. And that takes self-awareness. And he is really focusing on the daily task, breaking it down. Do you like spreadsheet work? Do you like talking to people? Do you actually enjoy maybe orchestrating things, building a schedule for somebody, right? What are those little things? And then make sure you do them at least 20% of the time every day. So don't push through a project and then you do things that you love at the end of the day, but do it every day so that you can have something that brings you joy every day in your work. 20% of your workday is, I don't know, like 40 minutes, something like that. It's not
Which is
that
not
much.
a lot.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. And just do that and find those things. And I think then the last thing to your question I would advise people to do is understanding how the things that you love actually support the goals of the organization. That's the other part I think sometimes that we're missing in these conversations. Yes, it's important that you find the things that give you joy, passion that you love. And when it comes to purpose and finding value in the work that you do, I think it's important to connect it back to the organization's mission and vision, to the goals that maybe even your immediate supervisor has, so that we can work together towards building something greater and not just for yourself.
So let me break that down further. It sounds like you have a lot of closely held passions. Now in your role, you're president of your company. How have you been able to kind of transfer those? I mean, it sounds like you're lucky because, or you ended up at the right spot. And we, in executive search, we know that if there's not that alignment,
Absolutely,
it's never going to be as optimal as what you're experiencing. But how have you been able to translate your own values and kind of infuse them into Kinesis? Even maybe ones that were outside of the company's mission. So that's like part one. And then part two, I'll ask about how Kinesis seeks to impact the larger community.
Yeah.
But let's start on a smaller scale. So how have you been able to translate?
Thank you. That's an exciting question. I think I came to it with already some values alignment, right? I think to your point, that's so important.
Yes.
To already have with leadership the same kind of outlook of the work that we want to do. How do we want to do the work? Because other times I've been in a position where it gets really frustrating when those values are not aligned. And really at the core, if I want improvement and I get told that, well, that's not really your lane, or don't look here, that's not your problem, I feel like I'm not living my fullest potential. And having that alignment was crucial for me to actually be successful, I think, at the company and then building kind of my reputation and what I could be doing. I think I saw other values that I have, like we talked about, the belonging aspect, maybe not quite as nourished as some others. So we have a value of share the good and build to last and think big and do the right things. Those are our 4 values. And all of these are great values. But I found that in the work together, we could use a little bit more focus on collaboration. We could use a little bit more communication tools to create the sense of belonging, where we would bring people together and really figure out, like, what do you need from me? How do we, outside of the mechanics of the business, how do we center every human and their needs to be heard and seen and felt? And again, integrate that into the work. So those were things that I implemented, which then I called, which is not necessarily my term, but I called it like a human-centric approach to work, rather than a mechanistic approach where employees are seen as a cog in the machine. So basically you have the job description and you're trying to fit somebody into that job description. That's a very antiquated way of doing work these days. I think we want to look at who do we have at the table, they share our values, they're the right people here. And then we figure out how do we use their skills, and of course, within the department that they're in and within the work that needs to be done in order to get the most value for the company. And also like value for them. That goes together. So, and when you do that, you are able to achieve a lot more growth, a lot more potential, a lot more happiness for employees.
Well, I'm going to pause the earlier line of questioning then to ask you, that's a quite a different mindset around hiring. So how do you hire at your company?
Yeah, we are very small. We are 11 people. We hire maybe one person every year or every year and a half. So we are very deliberate about the growth that we're having and making it small.
Well, let me ask, like, just to elaborate a little bit. It sounds like your process is so individualized. You know, you're looking at the skill set. So when you identify that it's time to bring someone new to your team, you're not necessarily looking to fill a hole, but you probably have an idea of how you want to grow organizationally.
Yes, absolutely.
You know, so I'm just curious because it is different than having a job description and
checking off the skill set.
That's what I mean.
Yes, no, absolutely. So we still have job descriptions, and I think that's important because people want clarity about, what do I need to do? How am I successful? We also ask a lot of questions in that job description. Our job description, or like the job posting, is very long. I think it's like 6 pages.
Okay.
And it starts with a letter from Sean, really explaining what the company's mission is, what we're here to do, and what kind of people are we looking for. So we need people that are very comfortable working in uncertainty, because often when we work with clients, there isn't necessarily a blueprint that we're applying, but we do collaborative work with them. We do bespoke custom consultations. We also do part of the work. We work in brand, we work in culture and engagement, and business strategy and business model design. So we need people to be well-versed in these fields. Obviously, that comes with a certain amount of skills, but we're really looking for people who are able to adapt well, people who are humble, generous, who are able to articulate complex problem situations well and break them down. So in our interview process, we obviously have like the personal vibe, culture add, but also making sure that, again, they're able to function at this very high level in uncertainty. And then we have them do a sample project. This is a fictitious project. We're not trying to get them to do work for clients or anything like that, but we do pay them because we feel like this is a time investment that they're making. And then they give us this project back. It's basically a company scenario where we say, what would you advise this company to do? This is the scenario. They maybe have a high turnover. They need more sales. They need more revenue. They are kind of stuck in their market. They know they have potential. The owner knows there is potential in my business, but I can't really get there. I don't really know what to do to realize it. And sometimes I also just have hunches. I don't really know how to articulate what we need to do. And so we leave that very open, and people come back to us with maybe 2 pages of written work. We don't want anybody to spend more than 4 hours on this. And then they give us a presentation about their findings, about what they would advise a client to do here. So we're trying to create, create the kind of same working environments that we often faced with in a very condensed version. And we're not necessarily looking for the right answers. We are looking for, how do you think? How do you approach the problem? This is very vast. Are you able to actually not get lost in all the little rabbit holes, but are you able to concisely present an idea and explain to us why this is a good idea or what you would try? In the work we do, we often do many experiments. We try to identify opportunities that we can leverage exponentially. So again, as small business owners, we have limited resources, both money and time and people. And we want to take the opportunities that we have and allocate those resources in a way that we potentially get more for them than just an incremental improvement. And we really feel like that's the times we're in. If we think about other generations, the baby boomer generation, if you think about them, they had, some big events happening in their lifetime. But over the span of their working life, everything was very constant. And incremental improvements and making 1-year plans, 5-year plans actually worked for them. Now we're living in an era of exponential change, exponential growth, exponential, just transformations of everything that we know. So we need to adapt and have a different leadership mindset. We also need to run our businesses differently. The 1-year plan is often just lies committed to paper because things are changing so quickly. So there's different tools and processes needed to accomplish this kind of leadership and this kind of business organization, and really understanding how you can leverage what you have in this new exponential era and take those quantum leaps that get you forward. And this is what we work with businesses on. And I think also as a leader, that's what I want to do. And for me, the best opportunity to invest in my business is people.
Yeah.
Because that's where the exponential opportunity often lies.
Yeah, and it's also, I think we're in an age of ambiguity as well.
Absolutely, yes.
That there is not do this to get the end results, and there's so many variables. And so when you're looking at your leadership style and people, because everybody's very complex, we're not very simple.
Absolutely.
What are some of the learnings that you've had on really working through that ambiguity as the leader?
Yes. That's such a great question. When I started being in a leadership position for the first time, which was going from a project manager where I managed projects, really trying to create a lot of certainty, to managing a team of project managers, I thought, well, this is great. I'm really good at this. I'm just going to tell people exactly how I do it, and then, we'll be awesome.
Yeah,
this is wonderful. I help them get there. It's great, and quickly realized that was not a good approach. And learned that what I really enjoy is actually people finding their own way. And sometimes it's better than mine. Or it's equally good and it's different. And sometimes it might be even like not quite as good, but they learned something, right? So I think that is what I find incredibly fascinating and satisfying, is helping people find their own path. And that is the greatest learning I had as a leader, that it's not about telling them or teaching them the right way. I mean, obviously, if you're an engineer, there is a certain way to do things. I get that. But oftentimes, even then, if we agree on the outcomes and if we agree on, this is our goal here, we want a satisfied customer and we want this thing to do X, Y, and Z. But the way you get there, I can give you some tips. I can offer some suggestions. I can give you some frameworks, but you need to find what's unique to you, where your love and passion and joy is, and also what makes sense to you. And I'm continuously learning that, because I often, I think we all make this mistake. We think like the way I think and the way I would like to be treated, other people want to be treated, but that's not necessarily true. We have some members on our team who want to be very, very independent. And we're going to have a meeting, we talk about it, and then they will say, okay, I take it from here, and then I'll, get you when I need you. Others are like, well, I don't really know how to get from here to here. What is your suggested way? They want more guidance. And that's also fine. And so I think as a leader, the adaptability, working in that ambiguity, and also understanding who needs what is kind of where the puzzle pieces come together. And I think as a leader, if you're not passionate about those things, then really people leadership might not be the right position for you. And I think that's also okay. I think as CEOs in companies or presidents or really at that executive level, we need to see that if we're really good at financials or we're really good at operations and we're not really good at people, we need to bring in somebody who's good at people. That's not something that comes naturally to all of us. I think this should be a function of every company, just like finance, just like operations. In every job, there's a financial component and an operational component. And there's a people component. And we need to think about, I think, especially around HR, moving away from a compliance set and really moving into a people set of, really an executive position that knows how to do that part.
Yeah, I was talking with the CEO of a fairly large company, and yes, it was a manufacturing organization. And he said something that has kind of bothered me. He said he kind of puts his leadership team into two categories. One is people who do the right thing, or they do the better thing. So people get stuck in, well, this is the way we've always done it, and this is the right way of doing things. And the people that look at things and continuous improvement of this is the better way. But I thought that was really too simplistic. That because, again, we're so complicated, and I kind of pushed him on it a little bit of thinking certain tasks, there is a right way. And certain tasks, there's a better way.
Absolutely.
And to put a label on someone, I just thought that was so interesting. And it just talking about this makes me kind of, expand on that. Because again, you're looking at things holistically, but not putting this label.
Absolutely. I think I just had a conversation the other day with somebody. It's this question, right, that we always have. Do people change? Yes or no? And everybody has an opinion about that. I'm a firm believer that people do change. I know I change.
Yes.
I don't know if I always change for the better, but I do change. And I think that's actually one of the things as a human being that, throughout evolution, we've been really good at, which is adapting. So yes, there is change. We're changing. We're constantly exposed to new experiences, and we process these experiences, whether we do it consciously or unconsciously. And yes, some people continue to exhibit the same behaviors because of multiple reasons, because at some point that worked for them, even if it doesn't work for them anymore. All those things, that's what therapy is for. But I think it's really important to be open to that possibility. That does not mean that everybody can ultimately do the job that we need them to do. Sometimes it's not a good fit for sure, and that happens. And that is just the normal cause of evolution as well, because people are sometimes changing, companies are changing, things are always in flux, and that rate of change is exponential for sure. So I think it's important to then understand if that's how it is, I need to help people to identify where are the ways in which they need to change, where I need them to change. Maybe I need some people to just keep doing the things how they used to be, to your point. Maybe there are some tasks that we figured this out, this is how we want it. And maybe once in a while we look at it and see, is there a reason to do this differently? Because again, we only have limited resources. We can't change everything all the time. So being aware of that is really important. But I think it's so limiting to think that people are this way and they're never going to change. Just to tell another story or another perspective on this, in our work, we have a lot of companies at this small scale. So we work with companies anywhere from 15 to 200 employees. And they often work with EOS, which is the Entrepreneurial Operating System. And it always, there's a lot of good things about it. But one of the things that's cracked me up is the people analyzer, where it's, very simple. This. And if you're not this, then there's nothing we can do about it, which I feel like is very short-sighted, because often people have so much potential. And if you're able as a leader to, realize it, unearth it, help them realize it, even if it's not at your company. Like I've had multiple people who I've worked with, and we went on this path of figuring out what they really wanted to do. And ultimately, it wasn't with us. It was somewhere else. And then I'm so happy to help them find that somewhere else. And we recently had a colleague who is really passionate about sustainability and said, Anja, this was a year ago. He said, I need to do work in that sector. I love it here, but we're not doing enough of it. Yeah. This is my personal calling. And I said, Kyle, you go, you do this. Can you give us like half time while you're looking for something else? He said, absolutely. And so he was looking and interviewing with companies. And ultimately, a couple of months, he decided, I'm going to stay. I have so many good things here, but can I build this here? Would you be open to building out more of a sustainability portfolio at Kinesis, like that we work with more clients in that field, we learn more about it, we figure out, we do so many things, cool things for companies, we really help them accelerate in many different ways, reach their potential. How about we're trying to do that more for companies who do good for the environment? And I'm like, yeah, this is brilliant. This is great. Like, let's do it. So again, having these avenues open, explore together, being open to people changing their minds and welcoming it in. And again, it should align with your strategy and with the goals that you have, which is why it's so important to have a strategy for your business. But I think it just opened up so many possibilities. And he is so happy. We are so happy. It's just really a great development.
It's like a master class in leadership. I mean, every week we learn so
I
much.
bet. Yeah.
But this is really impressive.
Well, and you talk about the passions and the vision, and Kinesis is a B Corp.
Correct.
Which
yes.
also adds a different element because you're saying from the get-go, this is what we believe in.
Yes.
We are giving back. We are investing into this. Would you ever start another company that wasn't a B Corp?
I really appreciate B Corp, what they're trying to do, especially here in the local community. We have a very strong B local community. I've made many friends and strong connections here. I think it can be improved, and I think they're working on that, on the assessment, because there's many categories, and you can kind of pick and choose where you want your points to come from. It's like, I don't want to get into all the details, but I think you can do good in the world and have this kind of mindset without being a B Corp. And I think you can be a B Corp and kind of weasel your way through a little bit and maybe not do what's really impactful. So I think the way, again, being strategic, the way I look at businesses, and impact in that sense, I want that to be strategic, and not everything has the same amount of impact. Yeah. And I don't know that a B Corp assessment, so that's the qualification tool to become a B Corp, actually captures the right areas of impact equally. So I think it's going to become more and more important for companies to have a sustainability focus. Yeah. I think it's more and more important for companies to have equity and inclusion focus. I think these should be really the driving factors in becoming a B Corp, because those two are really important in using business for good, which is essentially the mission of B Corp.
Right.
Absolutely. I'm going to bring something back up that you talked about, and because I think it's really important to state, because and that's really coming from a woman perspective. And we interview people for a living. And
Yes.
It's amazing. You said taking that stock on who you are, we found and I shouldn't say women because it's beyond women, but we have a position description, and let's say it has 10 requirements. Most people won't fill that out. Primarily women, and I will also say people of color won't fill out the application if they don't hit all 10. Versus a lot of times males go, oh, I've got 7 out of 10.
Yes.
I'd be perfect for it.
I think statistically it's proven if they have 3 out of 10.
I think so too. I was trying to be generous here. But, that's a whole different mindset.
Yes.
And such a different approach of what we've been talking about knowing who you are, where your passions lie, and going that way versus
Yes.
check.
And I would say that the lived experience for women, I can speak to that. I obviously cannot speak to the lived experience for people of color, but I think this might be similar to women's experience, is that the world has shown me that if I don't bring 100%, if I don't go above and beyond, I'm actually not valued the same way as my white male colleague. And white men get taught that, well, even if you get it like halfway there, oh, you're great, like this is good. And I don't mean this to be true for everyone, and I know this is a very broad generalization, but I think there is something that is very systemic in this, And so the more we can find tools and processes to counteract this systemic approach, I think the more we get women to apply. So maybe there's a different way of phrasing the requirements. Maybe there's a different way of really understanding, what do I need for this job? Is this really a requirement? Is a college degree a requirement? I have people on my leadership team that are absolutely excellent at what they do that don't have a college degree.
Yeah.
I don't put much stock into that. I have a master's degree. I'm very fond of academia. This is not a personal thing. I just have seen people really excel in highly, not just even as craftspeople, but at highly cognitive strategic roles without having a college degree. So again, those are some of the things I think where we put up barriers where we are actually not doing our companies a favor because we're not getting the best talent for the job.
So you work with a large amount of companies. These are pretty novel ideas, some of the things you're espousing here. Do you feel that you've been able to translate some of these ideas to a broader scale through your platform?
Absolutely. We are very selective in who we work with. What we have discovered is that we mainly work with, and this is, we've been in existence for 24 years. This is our 24th year. So we've had a lot of experiences in trial and error here, but we really need owner-operators. So we work only with owner-operators businesses because we want the decision-making power to be in the room, and we want the people who are making the decisions to actually have skin in the game in terms of the actual work. And we found that if we have people who are not caring about their people and not understanding how important that human aspect is to their business, they're not a good fit for us on a values perspective. We also work with people who run value shops. So let me get you just like a very quick overview of what we mean by that. A value shop is an organization that does not make widgets. So we don't crank out the same thing every time, but it's a very bespoke process. It's a consultative sales approach, often long sales cycles, low volume, high margin or high value sales, very highly qualified workforce. So we often work with companies that have engineers. Often they have engineers and also fabricators. So we have the traditional college degree, high expertise, and then we have the craftsman, high expertise on those areas. And we work with people or companies who are trying to figure out, I think, unique solutions to problems. Again, the engineering part, people who are bringing a new perspective to a field. I don't want to call them disruptors because that has been so often overused.
Yeah.
But really business owners who have a vision for doing things differently and solving a problem that they see either in their field or in society at large that is not being addressed in a good way.
No, and so taking what Tanis just asked of how do you instill this into a corporation?
Yes.
No. But it made me think, if you were to give advice to your younger self, what would you tell yourself?
Yeah, let me just get because I got lost in so what I wanted to say is we're working with these companies to then get them to the next level. And so these people come to us already with a certain mindset that is open. I think in our sales process, at some point we put up the slide that says transformation. And we say, if that doesn't excite you, you're probably not the right fit for us. Because we want people who are excited about trying something new, who are willing, again, with this exponential era, who are willing to place bets on things and are okay with this might work out, this might not work out. And when it doesn't work out, we're not going to discard it completely, but we're going to learn from it and iterate and move forward. So our team works that way. With our clients, we have a very collaborative process. So for example, when we do a brand with a client, we are not the ones who get the download and then we go into the dark room and do some magic and then ta-da, here's the big reveal. Right. We have a very disciplined process, step by step, where we collaborate with the client. It's work. We ask them, this is going to require time and effort on your part. Are you ready for it? Do you want to do this? Because we feel when we collaborate in that way, we get the best outcome. And the best outcome might not necessarily be what the client likes, but it's what the client needs. Yeah. So that's also very different.
Yeah.
Often clients come to us and say, I need a new website because I need sales. And the sales is not working. And then when we get into the process and looking at it, say, well, actually, you're pushing leads in. There's something not happening in your organization.
Yeah.
So we view this in the way that we call the inside-out way. So we have mission, vision, and values at the core. And then when you align your people around those values and the mission, they are able to actually do their job a lot better because they have a passion for it. Again, like all those things, right? We try to help them, teach them, coach them on how to find what people love doing. We want to get them to a point where they are able to position their workforce in a way that it's not just a job, but it's more than that. And they are aligned with what the company is trying to achieve. When you do that, your products and services will come out a lot better. That's just how it works, right? Especially for those companies that have like people at their core in a consultative way. And then because of that, you get a customer base that is really raving fans and is a referral base and all of those things. So we start at the core and build that outward, the inside out model. So we infuse this kind of thinking throughout all these processes. Again, in the areas that we work with, the brand, business model design and business strategy
and now
and culture.
Sustainability.
Yeah. So that's really the approach. So we're, and it's always, again, as I said, a collaboration. So the extent to which clients are willing to go on that journey is up to them, but we really trying to push them more towards making those things real in their businesses.
It's so funny hearing this approach.
There's a lot
I
of
know.
alignment.
I was going to say, you're speaking our acumen love language here.
Yeah.
You're getting all
Absolutely.
excited because, again, it's looking at something from a very different perspective. And there's not a right way.
Yes.
Or just a better way.
Yes.
It's different. Again, I love it.
Well, I think there's this openness to transformation.
Yes.
And you mentioned earlier how you don't like to use, binary language or, but I think even, I don't know that CEO you referenced was wrong, but I think his rhetoric is, very linear.
Linear.
Yeah.
And so it's, can people change? Maybe it's, maybe we never fundamentally change who we are, but we have the opportunity to grow and to transcend and to expand and evolve.
Yeah.
And, just paying attention to the language we're using. But I think it sounds like you're infusing so many of these ideals into the work with others. Yeah,
and I think, like, to your point, like, what would have told my younger self, right? Yeah. I think this is an evolution that I made because our approach, the way I look at it now, and I'm getting very close to 50, so I just turned 48. So I feel like it's a moment in my life where really I'm maybe re-examining also part of who I am and especially like my womanhood in that sense. And I feel like this approach that we're having, again, I don't want to genderify it, but it's a more like, I think, female characteristic approach. It's less of the top down, less of the rigidness that we often associate with male leadership, I think. And so for me, it's really important to bring that into the world and work with women in leadership roles specifically because I think there is a different perspective. But it only works, and this is like my own journey, where if you're actually embracing that, and men can embrace this obviously just as much. When I came up as a Gen Xer and in leadership roles, and my dad was in the military, I learned to understand that leadership is often a top-down and a strong position, a strong decisiveness, and operate that way. And I had to learn that that's not always the best way, especially as a woman. I was intense, I was aggressive, I was, versus like my male counterparts who showed up the same way and didn't get that feedback. So I took that as an opportunity, though, to look at, okay, but what's good about this other approach? Does this other approach work? And I think for me, that wasn't quite intuitive. Now it comes much more intuitive. But I hear that a lot about women who's like, yeah, but I don't want to lead that way. I don't want to lead that way. I want to lead with a more empathetic and compassionate approach. And now when we look at the literature, it actually is the better approach.
I remember it was probably 7 years ago, maybe even longer, that Harvard Business Review said the number one quality of of a impactful CEO is humility.
Yes.
And that has stuck with me for years because, again, it's not coming at it my way or the highway. It's, you know things I don't know. So let's learn together.
Yes, and let's learn to listen to each other. Really listen to learn and to understand versus listen to fix or listen to respond. So there's a lot of these types of things, I think, that inform the work that we do at Kinesis and that we try to advise our clients on and opening up that way. And it's, again, this is a long process. Leadership, again, is a process, I feel like. It's not, it's also maybe a mindset, but it's not something that you achieve at some point. So now I'm a leader. It's constantly evolving and figuring out what is the right way to go forward. And it's adaptive to the person that, or the company, the people that you're leading.
And I think the one thing I've learned interviewing leaders and CEOs of organizations in this podcast is nobody had a straight path.
Yes.
They didn't go from A to B and we did all the hurdles and we took all the steps. Everybody had this incredibly winding road. And I think it's those experiences of failure, of figuring out what works, what doesn't work, what motivates you, what is that leader.
Yes.
Like you can't say it's one thing.
Correct.
And so I think it's fascinating.
Yeah, I think that is so true. And embracing that versus I think what we got taught, again, with the generation before us, with the boomer generation, is like, no, it had to be this linear way and you had to chart your path and then you pursue your path, right? And I find people who have, the detours and the setbacks and much more interesting.
You're just going to learn so much more.
And enjoy life. And enjoy life more.
Yes.
It depends. I guess are you fueled by learning? I mean, for me, I resonate with so much of what you're saying. And I think that what you're offering here is going to be very valuable to the people who hear it.
I appreciate that. And thank you for giving me
that. And I want to end it
one more question.
One more question. So this is hiring for good.
Yes.
Which good means many different things. And it's usually bigger than ourselves.
Yes.
Because whether we look at someone else's life and their retention and longevity or their betterment, society, the impact, what does hiring for good mean to you?
That's a great question. I think hiring for good means it needs to be good for both parts. It needs to be good for the company who's hiring. It needs to be good for the person who's hired. And I think it's really important to define what that is. It's important to define it for us as a company. What is a good hire? What does this mean? And then it's also important to define it for the candidate. What is good to you? What does that mean to you? What do you want to get out of this? Like, what does that look like? And make sure both parties know both of these things. And I think for me, it would be like when I look at Kinesis and for us, a good person, I think, would be somebody who loves what we do, working with small businesses, working on transformation, likes to be challenged, likes new problems, finding new ways of moving through them and finding that exhilarating rather than, threatening or anxiety producing. And I would hope for them that they, thrive, learn something new, grow, and just be fulfilled. And for us, we want our clients obviously to be happy. We want to do more of this work and we want to grow. For sure, we want to, at some point, I think I would like to double the size of the company. Right now, it's really hard because we're all wearing so many hats. So people who have that kind of mindset, like a growth mindset, both for themselves, but also wanting to be part of something that we're building together. That's another one of my values, like building something. I think that would be ideal, and that would mean like, yeah, it's a good hire.
Thank you so much. This was just, I feel like we could go on.
I know. And I'm just
thank
going to
you.
say, Anja Taylor, president of Kinesis. And, I think it's, as a small business owner, it's humbling to say, wow, I have so much more to learn myself. So
Yeah,
thank
we
you.
all do. Thank you.
All right.
Awesome.
Thanks. Thanks for joining us today at Hiring for Good. If you were inspired by our conversation, don't forget to like, follow, and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.
And if you want to learn more about our executive search services, check us out at www.hiringforgood.net or our company website, Acumen Executive Search.
Thanks so much, and don't forget to join us next time for another in-depth conversation about transformational leadership. Until then, have fun.